In this video, I'm going to break down how operators can pivot out of Turo and how they can do it safely and successfully. Turo is actually a really good place to start your business. It's just not somewhere you want to end up long term. A lot of hosts hit a ceiling on Turo, and it just is not a sustainable place to grow your business for the long term. It's also really irresponsible as a business owner, especially if you're trying to grow a large fleet or you have a large fleet already, to rely on another business 100%. It just doesn't make sense. Maybe you're thinking about getting into Turo, and on your list, you're probably getting ready to buy a car, or you've just been watching a ton of YouTube videos figuring out how you can get cars. The thing is, that's great. You can start on Turo and you can still be successful on Turo as of now. But what's going to happen when you acquire all these cars and then Turo goes out of business, or they're just not cutting it for you anymore? You just freshly got into this business. You really got to start thinking about your other options. In this video, I'm going to break down how operators can responsibly pivot out of Turo. Over the years, I've been in the business for 8 years. I've done rentals on and off Turo. I've done $700,000 plus on Turo, cumulatively spread out over different accounts. I've done over $1 million a year in my car rental in general. As the years have went on, I've relied more of my business on private rentals. So when we're doing over $100,000 a month, 80 to 85% of those rentals are all private rentals. Most people are not leaving Turo or are deterred from doing Turo because they hate it or that they think that's a crappy business. What's happening now is that margins are getting compressed. The rules are constantly changing. There's more risk on Turo than there was ever before. And more importantly than all of that is that control is being taken away from hosts. The problem is not Turo itself. The problem is relying your business on another business. Turo is a platform, and you should use Turo for leverage, nothing else. Turo does not equal ownership. You don't have shares or interest in Turo. Turo is not paying you besides for your vehicles when they're being used. So you need to build your business, not relying on the back of a platform like that. I have a similar video that kind of talks about going beyond Turo and how you can diversify your business for the future. Now it's time to dive into it step by step. First things first, and the biggest challenge that I see for a lot of hosts and a lot of questions that I get and a lot of questions that I see is insurance. Now, I'm not a licensed insurance broker or agent, so you should definitely consult one to best assess your needs. But generally, you're gonna have to get off of whatever insurance you're on. You need to get on a commercial insurance, and you need to get on an off-trip insurance. So basically what it comes down to is finding off-trip coverage and then securing your rental while it's on a trip to minimize your risk exposure. There are a bunch of different options when it comes to this. If you choose a platform like Roamly, you can actually do private rentals. They're not going to cover you during the rental, but they are going to cover you off trip, and they'll allow you to do private rentals, meaning they're not tracking the mileage and things like that. They don't care if you rent it privately during your off trip time. And there are also plenty of commercial insurance providers that will definitely cover your vehicles or write you a CSL or something like that. Some of these companies include Prime Insurance, Adify, Zurich Insurance, GMI. There's even other ones out there. So I would definitely look into those companies when it comes to insuring for private rentals. A lot of people get confused about damage waivers. So Turo is a self-insured business, so they can sell damage waivers and they're just taking on that risk, right? So that's why they collect fees for every trip. They have deductibles. When it comes to private rentals, people get confused with on-trip insurance and off-trip insurance. For the on-trip insurance, they're thinking that they need a commercial coverage that they can sell damage waivers or that they can make a claim through their insurance when the car's on a rental. The thing is, even if you have that kind of coverage where you can pass forward protection for a damage waiver, if someone gets in an accident in your vehicle, you don't even want to file those claims through your insurance anyways. Because as soon as you file a couple of claims, you're going to get kicked off of commercial insurance. It's going to be really hard to find another provider to cover you. And then you're not even going to have commercial insurance for your vehicle. Again, consult an insurance professional to make sure that you're fully covered when you need to be. But you got to look at them as two different packages. You're going to have your off-trip insurance, things that happen when the cars are in your possession, and then on-trip coverage is different. On-trip coverage can be as simple as using the renter's insurance, so verifying the renter's insurance, and there's different systems and ways to do that. Maybe I'll get into that into another video because that's just a lot to talk about. An added form of protection can be the renter's insurance. Next, you can have them purchase a third-party policy that's going to cover your car during a rental. So there are websites like, and this doesn't necessarily apply to exotics, this part right here, though there are some over-the-counter insurances that you can provide, but I'm just talking more for Turo-based hosts, so you're likely not running exotic vehicles at this time. There's going to be websites like rentalcover.com. For example, they can purchase a policy, there's certain coverage limits, and then they're going to be covered. It's essentially almost like a non-owner's policy, but they can go ahead and purchase this insurance. They want to rent tomorrow, they'll go on the website, they'll purchase the insurance, and then you have them under contract, and that'll be their active insurance during the trip, so they have coverage. You can also point them towards a non-owner's policy with a bigger insurance provider. Companies like Bristol West and other insurance companies will write what's called a non-owner's policy. So essentially, they're insured for any vehicle that they drive, but they don't own a vehicle. If you can't use their insurance on your trip, then you can just point them to a non-owner's policy or one of these third-party policies. Kind of sort of the last option when it comes to insurance, and this can also be a backup for your other methods of coverage. The more you're able to layer, the more protection you're going to have. Is getting a commercial coverage that sells damage waivers. You don't really want to use those damage waivers, but if you can set yourself up in a way to where you can charge for damage waivers, you may in a sense even become self-insured, not really, but you can charge a guest per trip if they want to pay for a damage waiver, and you'd have to do the math on that. This is getting into like a complex business model. You can sell these damage waivers. Maybe you're paying repairs out of pocket because they purchase damage waivers. You never file a claim with your insurance really. And over time, maybe you're making more money on the damage waivers than you are paying out in incidentals. This is not something I would recommend for a beginner, but it is an option. Or you could just have it as a thing in your back pocket that you never really use, but some sort of commercial coverage to where if their other layers of protection fail, you can use those. Your pivot away from Turo is really just reducing your dependency on Turo. I think the biggest dependency on Turo are two things. That's going to be insurance coverage and marketing services. This is why it's a great place to start, because people start out on Turo, they get free marketing and they get insurance coverage that's just really easy. They don't really have to think about it. But a lot of people are still doing it incorrectly when it comes to Turo. But really, you just want to use Turo as a buffer, because if you're going in with that mindset and you're not learning along the process, then you're stuck in Turo and you're becoming dependent on Turo. Right now, if you get a bad renter on Turo, you're kind of stuck with that renter. You pretty much forced to rent to them. Even if you know most likely that something bad's going to happen to the car, you're still stuck renting to them. That's just a very unfortunate scenario. A lot of people are losing a lot of money this way. And Turo also doesn't reimburse for small damages. When you're doing private rentals, you can pick and choose your own clients. You can charge for any damages. If you have your insurance processes in check, you're also not going to be paying $2,500 deductibles, $1,500 deductibles. You're going to be coming out of pocket a lot less. Right now, Turo could put you in a really bad position. Maybe you have a car, it's getting booked on Turo. You know this renter is going to be bad. You know they're probably going to crash the car. They crash the car. Now you're having to pay your deductible. You're going to have downtime on the car that you can't control. You're relying on Turo's towing process, on their evaluation process. Then if you disagree with their valuation, it's very hard unless you go into arbitration to get your valuation revised. With private insurance companies, it's usually a lot easier to do this. And then the downfall is do you even want to get into arbitration with Turo, because maybe there's a back end thing where it's like a bad mark on your account or something, or they're going to want to kick you off the platform if you're being too combative with them. And it just puts you in a bad position, really. They're just kind of cornering you, and that's not the position you want to be in. That doesn't mean you don't want to use Turo, because Turo can still be a great platform. It's just not something that you want to be in this corner all the time. You want to be in that corner because you chose to be in that corner, not because you're forced to be in that corner. With that said, if you're on Turo and you want to pivot out of Turo into private rentals, or you're wanting to get into the car rental game, regular or exotic car rentals, you can apply in the link in the description below to work with me one-on-one. It's a one-on-one mentorship. I can help you build your car rental business or pivot into private rentals in less than 60 days. I am only taking a limited number of students, and my first round is filling up quick. So I encourage you, if you're interested in this, apply in the link below and we'll see if you're a good fit to work with me. I will say that private rentals are not necessarily easier. They're a little bit more demanding, but you can just go so much further in private rentals. Renters from you are going to expect a lot of professionalism. Communication matters a lot more. You're the only customer support. You're the only way they have roadside or any accidents or anything like that. You're the only form of contact. Mistakes can also be a lot more expensive, and that's why you've got to make sure that you have the right safeguards when going into private rentals. But if you do have the right safeguards going into private rentals long term, it's just so much more on your own terms. Now, outside of insurance, the biggest fear for a lot of people is marketing. When you start on Turo, you're going to build a return clientele, hopefully. If you're doing really good customer service, a lot of those people are going to ask you if you do private rentals. You can always keep that in your back pocket for later on. The next thing is going to be building relationships. Here's a personal example. I go to a car mechanic down the street. They take really, really good care of me. And the owner of that mechanic shop has actually approached me to park all my cars on his lot so that way he can rent those out to his clients. That right there is a great flow of systems, because he has so many people coming in all day, every day, that my fleet is going to be fully booked once I put it into that shop. Building really good relationships with body shops and mechanic shops, you can literally set up partnerships with them to where you can just keep cars on their lot, or you can offer discounts to their clients. It's a great avenue to get private rentals. The next thing that's super, super slept on, and I don't know why people just don't think of this right off the bat, maybe they don't have enough business experience, but it's a Google business profile. Google business profile, when you type in your company or they type in car rentals, you're going to pop up. It's going to have your listing service, your phone number. It's not just the Google website ranking, it's the actual listing. When you go to look for a restaurant to eat and it has the listing and the address and the reviews of that business, that's exactly what a Google business profile is. It's super, super slept on. If you can manage to get a Google business profile in a hot area, you're going to get a lot of phone calls from that. For my exotic car rental business, I was getting so many phone calls from Google business profile. I was literally making me hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the cost is free. Then of course there's social media, word of mouth, typical other avenues of marketing. You can do paid advertising. There's just so many different things that you can do, but instead of pondering on that, you just need to get into it, especially if you're already on Turo or you have the capacity to get on Turo. You can start there, getting some of your fleet booked out as you're learning the business, and then you can start exploring these other avenues of marketing, and you really should. Other things that you're gonna need to learn when you're pivoting into private rentals is gonna be your legal templates. So you're gonna have to have a rental agreement. You wanna make sure that the renter is legally binded in contract to the responsibility of your vehicle. There's also a thing called Graves Amendment, which a lot of people fear when they get into private rentals. Well, what if that renter gets into a wreck and my company gets sued? Graves Amendment actually makes it so that the rental company or leasing company cannot really be held liable for the renter's actions in your vehicle. So if you have a good contract, that's going to bind your renter to the legal terms of renting your vehicle. Just make sure you consult a lawyer or a licensed professional before you put this into play. With that, some other things you're gonna have to get used to are standard operating procedures, which are exactly what they sound like. You're gonna want good documentation before the car goes out on a rental. You're gonna want good documentation when the car comes back from a rental. That way, when you make an insurance claim, just like with Turo, they're not questioning, well, what was the condition of the car beforehand?
Shit. I told you guys Mercury was in retrograde. Look at this shit. It's all good though. We prevail regardless. Okay?
And so just do like a walk around video before photos, just like you would on a Turo rental. And that's another pro tip. If you're getting on Turo or you're on Turo, if you don't have a particular area imaged that got damaged and you try to make a claim on that area, Turo is going to deny you. If your whole dashboard gets ripped out because your vehicle got stolen and you don't have an interior photo of your dashboard, they're not going to cover that. Private rental companies have a lot more leniency when it comes to this. You still want documentation of how your vehicle was before, but I've had many instances where you make a claim through the renter's insurance, let's say it's the Geico policy or their Progressive policy, and they don't really even ask for the before conditions of the car. You should definitely still get the before conditions of your car. I'm just saying they don't make you jump through hurdles to prove that something happened on a rental, especially if there's a police report or there's witness statements or your renter admits to fault. That's really mostly what comes with pivoting. I know it sounds like super simple, but it really just comes down to your insurance processes and protection processes, your standard operating procedures, your rental agreements, your legal templates, the way you handle customers. And then there are other things that also you have to take into control, which is if a vehicle needs repossession, you got to have systems to repossess your vehicles because Turo is not going to come and save you. You can hire a repo man. You can put kill switches on your cars, make sure you have extra keys for every single one of them. That way you can take the cars when you need to. And then part of your operating and booking procedure is going to be screening. Because Turo does the customer screening, that's something you're going to have to take into your own hands. And I'm going to be honest here, Turo does not have a good customer screening system. There are customers on Turo that have suspended licenses, that have criminal backgrounds with violent felonies or car thefts. Literally, I've heard other fellow hosts that find ways to look into clients before they rent their vehicles, and essentially there's people literally with car thefts on their record renting vehicles on Turo. So it's kind of a scary thing because now you're responsible for vetting the client yourself, but you're probably going to vet them better than Turo, especially if you're using the right systems. And there's softwares out there you can do that with. Skip trace. There is a legal disclaimer here. You cannot disqualify a client based on this information that you find. Do with that statement what you will, but you get to screen renters a lot better. There are ways to check their licenses for points to see if their license is even active. All things to take into consideration, but those are a heavy part of the process that you want to make sure that you hone in on. But if you can get that in lock with your insurance checks, you can get that in lock with your standard operating procedures. You can have good insurance claim flows. You have good mechanic connections, which you should have with Turo anyways. You're going to have no problem running a private rental business. Touching on the mechanic shops, maybe you already have good relationships with mechanic shops or body shops, and then Turo makes it difficult. A renter does something negligent on a rental that causes your powertrain to fail in some sort of way, and Turo denies the claim, claiming it average wear and tear. These are things that you can take into your own hands when you're doing private rentals. When it comes to body damage claims, Turo a lot of the times is going to request supplementals from shops. Shops submit supplementals. They're not enough to cover damage. Some hosts literally lose so much money because Turo won't pay out on the full damage claim, and it's literally nothing more that you can do. Your body shop's doing everything they can. They're giving you discounted pricing, whatever it may be, and you're still coming out of pocket on top of your deductible for Turo claims. These are all things that you can take control of when it comes to private rentals. And on top of that, you're making way more money Think about it. Turo right now is charging on some rentals, they're charging literally double the daily rate to rent a car out. If your Volkswagen Tiguan is renting for $70 a day, Turo might be charging $140 a day. So even if you come in at $90 to $100 a day, you're so competitive, you're keeping more of the margin. Turo's not taking a cut for their protection plan, and you just get to keep so much more money in your pocket. But there's the flip side to that, that if you're not doing private rentals correctly, you can lose so much money. If you don't know the insurance verification systems and they crash a car, it really is as simple as calling the insurance of the renter, verifying their insurance, making sure they have good coverage limits, they have full coverage that transfers over to rental vehicles. But if for some reason you're not doing that on a recorded line, or there are little nuances that you can miss, maybe it's in the screening process, there's a fake identity out there. If you don't know how to spot flags like that, it can become expensive quick. But if you know how to spot all of the flags, this is literally a no-brainer. Pivoting out of Turo is just in general going to give you so much more leverage, higher profit margins. What I will say is that it is a much more involved business pivoting out of Turo, but you also get to set more control for yourself. You literally don't have to follow any Turo terms of service. You can make up your own terms of service, though a lot of them do make sense, but there are some things on there that just do not make sense. People are smoking in your car, you can charge them a smoking fee. People leave a mess in your car, you can charge them a cleaning fee, and there's no kickback from anybody. You charge based on your discretion. Obviously, if they're like really minor things and you want to keep customers returning, you might not want to be super picky and charge for every little thing. But in theory, you can charge for anything that you want to charge that's not in line with your guidelines. Big mistakes that I see though when people are pivoting out of Turo is they're not pivoting correctly. People will, and I see this with people on Turo all the time, or I'll even have guests that from other Turo hosts will have explained to me situations where I'm like, the host really did that? A lot of people will offer, oh, can I keep the car an extra day? I'm gonna slide you some cash. Definitely don't do those kinds of things. Don't do things on a handshake. A lot of private rental operators, they kind of do things on a handshake, or they don't know how to verify insurance properly. And they're just like, oh, well, he has insurance. He showed me his insurance card, so I'm gonna rent him his car. Those are all mistakes that you want to avoid. So you want to make sure that you take your time when you're pivoting, you're doing your research, you're watching videos like this, because the last thing you want to do is, oh yeah, you can keep my car. I'll just, just throw me some cash and we're good on a handshake. And then maybe you claim it on your personal insurance when something goes wrong. Something like that can literally land you in jail. So that's not something that you want to get into. And really, it just comes down to insurance, standard operating procedures, and marketing. That in a nutshell is going to have your own private car rental company.